UK dealmaker Lord Frost arrived in the Belgian capital for one last throw of the dice with EU Brexit chief Michel Barnier. Arriving from London, the peer today said, "We're going to be working very hard to get a deal. We're going to see what happens in negotiations today and we'll be looking forward to meeting our European colleagues later this afternoon." Senior Brussels sources were optimistic there is finally light at the end of the tunnel in the bitter wrangling over post-Brexit fishing rights and common standards. Mr. Barnier today cleared his diary, cancelling meetings with EU 27 ambassadors and MEPs, to have a serious stab at ending the deadlock, they said. An EU diplomat familiar with the discussions told Express.co.uk, "It feels all quite choreographed. Storms are coming and black ice is forecast, but it feels too early for the talks to derail. My money is on a Tuesday deal." Prime Minister Boris Johnson will hold further talks with Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tomorrow evening to evaluate their negotiators' work. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said the Brexit trade deal is 97 or 98% complete and we are more likely to get a deal than not. "We will use your email address only for sending you newsletters. Please see our privacy notice for details of your data protection rights." More pessimistic officials put the odds of a deal at 50-50 because of the fundamental issues still to be resolved. The diplomat said the challenge was in finding a compromise that would allow Brussels to respond with trade tariffs if Britain refuses to match the bloc's standards in the future. Even the French government, which last week threatened to vote down any trade deal over concerns Mr. Barnier was being too soft, signaled it was ready to allow Britain to diverge from EU rules. Europe Minister Clement Beaune, a close ally of Emmanuel Macron, said, "The British want access to the single market without constraints for their social, environmental and health standards, which is unacceptable. For our part, we are ready to put in place a system in which divergence of standards would be allowed but beyond which corrective measures would be taken. The British tell us that this is unfair because other third countries do not have these same constraints, such as Canada. But we have to realize that the UK will be our major trading partner outside the EU tomorrow." EU sources said trust has been restored in Mr. Barnier after he came under fire for offering Britain too many concessions to get the deal over the line before the end of the transition period. Hardline capitals blamed one of Mrs. von der Leyen's top aides, Stephanie Riso, for the softened approach. A source said, "We feel Riso may have given away too much last week, which has now been rectified by Mr. Barnier himself." In a weekend interview, Mr. Beaune insisted Paris was still prepared to veto any Brexit deal if its fishermen are largely locked out of Britain's coastal waters. He said, "If there is an agreement, we will evaluate the text, analyze it. But, if the agreement is not good and does not conform to our interests, especially for the fishermen, we, France, like every member state, could veto it." And in a sign of growing tensions between Paris and Berlin over concessions, Mr. Beaune claimed a bad Brexit deal would hammer the German economy. He said, "As for the Chancellor Merkel, she wants a deal, but she also defends our demands, and she knows the European market well enough to guess how the German economy would suffer from a bad deal." Brussels sources said they are confident Mr. Johnson will drop controversial clauses in his internal market bill before the legislation returns to the House of Commons on Wednesday. The Prime Minister is set to overturn a vote by peers after they tried to scrap his safety net laws to stop the EU carving up the UK by breaching last year's Brexit divorce deal if trade talks collapse. An insider added, "Even if the internal market bill were to land properly, we could keep on going on the premise the offending clauses are scrapped before signature of the trade deal."